All right, so welcome into the live stream today. We're going to be jumping into where the markets are going. This is our altcoin show, even though we are going to talk about Bitcoin and Ethereum. We'll get into all that good stuff. My name is Paul Barron. Welcome back into Tech Path. Joining me today, Mr. Evan Aldo, back in the house.
Always great to be on.
Killing it. The knives were out in the last episode, I felt like.
It's more fun when the knives are out.
Yeah, I like it too. Yeah, it's good. We like to get that feedback from the audience because it's, one, not everybody is always on the same page. You have to listen to a lot of voices. But before we get started, we're going to thank our sponsor, and that is Ledger. If you guys are looking at self-custody, if you are not, that is the first step in your crypto journey. Before you do anything, learn how to self-custody your tokens. It is the way to go. They have a really cool promo going on right now called Pick Your Quest. And it's pretty cool because you get a chance to basically initiate some of these quests. You can go through these. This is one right now that's going in on Cool Cats. It's a very easy one. Here's some of the ones that have been ended. You basically get a personalized ledger. You can kind of see the one right here with Cool Cats. Here's another one that just happened with World of Women, NFT projects. Again, very cool features. I think Ledger's doing a really good job just in general around marketing and promoting to the current industry, but I'd like them to see them really go after new people that are getting into self-custody for the first time. Check it out. It's very simple. Use our link down below, and it does help the channel out. Before we get started, Evan, last week you were trending down. We saw this big, on Thursday last week, we saw the big sentiment drop.
Right.
And then right after that, Thursday or Friday afternoon, we saw the liquidity event occur.
Right.
So we were both right.
Right.
Fortunately. on that one.
Unfortunately, it went down.
Yeah, unfortunately. Yeah. Well, listen, speaking of people who may or may not be right, of course, we're going to jump over to Chairman Powell, who says no one should assume that the Federal Reserve can protect the economy in a debt default. He is talking about the debt ceiling, and this is something that I have heard him say, Evan, many times. He said this in the FOMC, the last FOMC, many times talking about the debt ceiling and that Congress needed to go ahead and get this done. He said it during this hearing, and he's been reiterating that it's almost as he's really worried about this.
He doesn't want accountability if something really goes wrong.
Yeah, and of course, I think this is just a simple way for them to go in and print some more money. He also came on and said we could have real-time payments in this country very soon. I don't know if we can play this clip. Let me play this for you guys.
Years in the evaluation, and I think we can get this into the hands of the public very quickly, and I think we'll have real-time payments in this country very, very soon, and so that's a good thing.
All right, so really what he's getting into there, I think, is kind of the Fed Now concept. It's not necessarily creating a CBDC, a digital dollar, because they just don't have enough time, for that to really happen. So there is potential use cases around Fed Now with crypto. Could be USDC or others that could be looming out there. So that's a possibility. But at the same time, I don't know that he really understands where this could go. For him to say it in that way, this could happen very soon, I think is a little surprising to me, because even knowing the tech, it's the bureaucracy that happens in DC that I think would slow this down in a big way.
Yeah, it would be surprising. I mean, maybe there's a small probability if regulation gets passed quickly mid to later this year, maybe you could be talking about it more, but from what he sounds like, I don't think.
He's out there just spouting CBDC. Yeah. Powell also says inflation has a significant impact on working families, so we'll keep raising rates until families are no longer working. This gets into the whole idea of whether or not we're going to see a quarter or a 50 basis points on our next move here. I still think 50 basis points is in the cards right now. There's too many good signals coming from the economy still, and we should be well into this recession. And it just seems like it's very tenacious in the sense of holding on to these good markers, including real estate, but jobs, obviously. Rents came down a little bit. Real estate is very, very sticky in some markets. We're not seeing any impact. So this in itself, I think, is going to be one to watch as well. Let's jump over to the Bitcoin chart, because I want to get into Bitcoin quickly, of where this might go and what this 50 basis point might do to the market. Do you think it's priced in? Where is your charts pointing?
I don't think it's priced in, and it seems like kind of the nature of trying to get all this, get things down, get inflation down finally, is what you could see on this 2-week chart on Bitcoin right here, is what I've been talking about for a little bit now. And kind of my thing here is, if you look at market cipher, money flow coming out, This one now is a bit slightly worse, I would say, because you have money flow coming out while the VWAP is coming down. As this gets closer to zero line, this gets more bearish. You're crossing into the red, and I drew this line. This is kind of my estimate on what could happen. It's kind of the same thing here for a potential really good buying opportunity. Obviously, it was after the bottom last time. I think it could be different this time where this brings us into the bottom. And I think what we're going to see is a similarity, a repeat of, just this rally here was a much greater version of this rally here, and the Fed's jumping in to kind of stop it right now. Now we're coming down this much. This gives my estimate to a bottom somewhere around July, August in the summer to a bit of a lower low, somewhere between, worst case scenario, 9K down here, kind of the higher ends, 14K. I don't think it's going to go to 9K. We have the 500 weekly moving average, which is huge. I think that's going to be the most likely kind of scenario here. And if you also look at our 200 week, this was huge how we rejected from it. And there's not much of a sign that we're just going to come up and bust right through, because if you see in the weekly, we're printing a red dot here. This is a wave above the zero line, quite a bit above that. I'd be very surprised if you're able to just break through and keep going here, unless you're just entering such a bull run, but we're not there yet. I think we're more in an area like this where you're just going to come down some more, especially with the Fed raising rates.
Yeah, the 50 basis points will have an impact. And if you look at the trend lines of where sentiment has been, I'm going to zoom in on this. This was the liquidity event that occurred last week. And we saw that big drop. And then sure enough, Friday after the sentiment print, the drop came in. We've continued to see that decline, though. So this is something that is also in alignment with where we are right now. That's a 12% where we're trading today, off of that little bit of a local high, which we had right there at a 24.8 back here on Feb 21st. That, to me, guys, is a long-term indicator that we are still on the bullish side of this. We haven't seen any indicators pointing on both Ethereum and Bitcoin that are trending up. And one of the things I do watch is this spread right here between amplification, and it's starting to distance itself. This is the thing that we're watching right now. Up here, you'll see where it's a little tighter. It kind of gets a little tighter right in here, and then boom, it starts to separate a little bit, simply meaning that we're seeing more people talking about either exiting a position or changing their particular scenario on a trade around Bitcoin as it is today. With Bitcoin now potentially getting ready to enter the 21s, most likely we'll see a 21.5 here, maybe by end of week even.
Yeah.
Very possible.
Yeah.
The likelihood of buying zones, where would those be for you right now? If you were saying, hey, let's just play it out. We'll go with $5,000.
Right.
I've got $5,000. Where are my points? Because I'm not a big dollar cost average guy. I'm looking for those events to occur.
Yeah, just buying points, yeah.
What are the ones that you're playing on?
Yeah, I mean, for right now, if we look at my chart, the best thing to do for that is to look at support and resistance points. So we have a technical target out of this wedge down at about 21.5. We also have a volume area low at 21.6. Since the higher time frames look so bearish, I would be more inclined to wait for the spiral line. If you're not familiar with spiral lines, they're just big points of support and resistance. We have this one right here at about 21, and then we have this pocket right here. Usually when you see a pocket, 25, that's going to be a big place. Then you have another pocket. So it goes all the way down. If you set limit orders at 20.5, another one at 19.5, this one's 18.8, these areas are going to be big, and they go down a lot. You could be going down, you got it down to 14, 15K here for the lowest one, that area. So that's a big place. For the short term, though, I would see this technical target, and if you go on logarithmic spiral lines, this area, technical target right around 21K. But I think there's more downside.
Yeah, for sure. Looking at Ethereum, all right, so Ethereum kind of pacing in. We have Shanghai potentially locking in. What that might mean to staked ETH. Additionally, with that, you've got 4337. A lot of factors happening in terms. You've got the Polygon ZK EVM roll-up. All these things kind of centering around, at the same time, potentially 50 basis points, which is a market hit.
Yep.
Likelihood of having an S&P also cause a little bit of trouble.
That doesn't look good either. Yeah.
So with that being the case, where would you say ETH is going to hold out here?
So my two trajectories right now, my short-term trajectory is this line right here that you can see. This is a short-term trajectory right to this big area at about 1100. You could hit this theoretically by the end of the month, maybe into early April, depending on what happens, April into May. I mean, this could go on until, it's a big range, somewhere between beginning of April or end of March all the way till beginning of May, this 11 1100 range. After that, I think on the real macro, you're going to hit down here. And I think this red dot here, split RSIs on the weekly, is a very bearish thing. If you look at the 12-day, very similar to the 2-week on Bitcoin, this looks about as bad as possible. My estimate here is repeating and coming deeper into the red right here, coming down this much. So if you see this trajectory, it's this same thing that I drew out right here for a potential bottom. Maybe not as low as we went with the pandemic. This is kind of a bad case scenario, 520 by the end of the year. I think it's going to let up a little bit and be quicker in that. Sometime in the summer is my main guess, around kind of 600, 500. Ooh. ETH Bitcoin looks terrible right now. I think ETH could, this is going to be rough, but ETH could bleed at least 20% against Bitcoin. I would say up to 50% against Bitcoin, into by the end of the year, theoretically. If it does do that, that's the place to get in. You know what I mean?
For sure.
And then just short term, like the last thing I want to show you right here, your daily is about to cross into the red. That could be a big trajectory downward, coming deep into the money flow, right down to 1100. There's a lot of support in between there, but I don't think it's going to give us what some people are expecting there.
Yeah, this is kind of a no-fly zone right now. We've got some interesting. I think it's also showing out in some of the volumes, which are much lower currently. Looking at the sentiment on ETH, this was the one that we were a little concerned with last week. Had that little dip last week, and then right into that correction, which was the liquidity event. The big concern I have right now is, again, our amplification sentiment marker that we use has now gone under the overall market. That's usually a bad indicator for ETH, because it's usually very stable around that element. And even if you look at the charting that we did last week, there's a trend line that we've been watching since that high at 1690, almost 1700. And if you'll notice, it just cuts right through these descents. Now, this is the end of March right here. The potential, could we see this trend line build out if we're continuing to see this downtrend right here on sentiment, is what we're watching really closely. The one thing that I think will factor in is going to be after we see the 50 base, if we see the 50 basis points, what kind of market reactions we're going to have there. All right, so let's get to a couple other things. I want to jump over to Tesla for a second. Now, Tesla's got a couple of things. We talk about Tesla and a handful of other stocks here as well. A lot of recalls lately and adjustments. As you guys know, I'm a Tesla driver, and I've had actually one of these happen, which was one of the software updates that was causing some problems with the vehicle doing these braking scenarios, and that was a very scary issue. That did happen to me, but some of these others recently, not necessarily the case. What do you think in terms of stock price on Tesla? It's starting to take a little bit of a hit today.
I think there's a lot of paper hands just on fundamental. Fundamentally, there's a lot of paper hands holding Tesla. I think as we go into a recession, a lot of those are going to get flushed out. I think this was a big kind of unsustainable rally, as you can see right here, what we've done in the 3-day chart. And we're kind of repeating this pattern. RSI is curving back down, red dot here. I think you're going to see somewhat of a repeat of this. Also, here's kind of my prediction. I think we could see a potential bottom in the summer, somewhere around $70. Not quite to pre-pandemic numbers, but close to that area potentially.
That'd be a big hit.
Yeah, that'd be a huge hit. And what you could see too here is this money flow crossover on the 6 hour here I was mapping out. I think we could see a repeat of what happened back here. And let's just map this out a little bit. With the line, that's the same line I already drew. It would bring us right around 70 into July. That's my main guess for a lot of the bottoms. I think that's kind of a lot of the bottoms for traditional markets too, for everything Bitcoin around the summer, July, August.
Yeah, Investor Day was not, there's some people that say Investor Day was great. There was a lot that was put out there. Me personally, in listening to it, it looked like a lot of reruns to what was happening. Again, we didn't get a lot of roadmap in terms of sales, which is going to be one of the bigger factors. The other thing that's interesting is I'm getting Tesla pitching me deals now. Like on my text, I get hey, you were interested in a Model S, and
the inventory is way more available too.
So this is intriguing to me. If you look at the downtrend that we saw on Tesla, right here, this happened all the way back in September, down here to the bottom, right there, 66% or 66% drop there. But then if you were able to get in here at the bottom, which was around that $100 mark, the opportunity was pretty significant here since the January. You had a nice little 100% run there. So that was a good one. So maybe if you're holding, that's why we're seeing some paper hands kind of exiting this position, which was around the $213 mark. Remember, 308 was the high about 6 months ago. So
Yeah.
it's fallen dramatically, trading now at $180. So we're almost at 50% stock hit.
Yeah.
Yeah, so just from that period of time. Further into scenarios, I want to get into other aspects of today's show. And what was the other one I wanted to hit on? All right, so this was back to Bitcoin. This was talking about some seized wallets, moved approximately around 40K in Bitcoin. Do you think these kinds of moves really impact Bitcoin?
It depends what the kind of the U.S. government wants to do with it. I think if I remember correctly, they're the second biggest holder of Bitcoin, the U.S. government. I think it would make sense for them to dump at least some of it. You know what I mean?
At these prices?
Maybe. I mean, I don't see why not. The U.S. government's not that, they don't care. So I think there could be some FUD in there. It's the same thing with ETH, the ETH fork, the Shanghai thing. I mean, we've been talking about FUD with Mt. Gox for so long. I forget what happened with that. I think we're still waiting for outcome on that. So there's always going to be that possibility of that dumping the price,
Yeah, for sure. Now, there are some people that are still on the camp on ETH that there could be a rally here. Why in the world do you see a potential, or would you see a potential rally playing out? Is there any way that your chart paints that out?
Not really. And I mean, maybe if Powell didn't sound so hawkish, yesterday, I would have seen that more. So the main thing that people are talking about, I don't think this is going to happen, but if you look at the daily on ETH, this is what's called a hidden bearish div. Fun fact, CryptoFace, the creator of Market Cypher, I've talked to him about this. He's not even that big on hidden bullish divs, the hidden bullish div, excuse me. And this is where price makes a higher high while momentum makes a lower low. You could just about do it here. And this would bring you up higher to potentially 1900. There's been a lot of liquidations. There's a lot of shorts with liquidation points up at these areas. Not that quite high, but up here. So it could give you a potential pump to there into maybe the end of the month. But I'd be very surprised, especially hearing what Powell said. I think the odds are under 10% of that.
Yeah, for us to get a 25. Yeah, for sure. Coinbase announced today that they have a wallet as a service program, making it easier for any company or brand to seamlessly onboard their users in a Web3. So even if they've never used cryptocurrency before, this is a pretty cool tool. I haven't seen it in action just yet in terms of integration, but if it meets 70, 80% of what it promises, this would be pretty significant in terms of the use case for crypto, especially around Web3 business applications. Kathy Wood continues to put money into ARK, obviously into Coin.
Yeah.
She's repositioned several times here recently. What is your position on Coinbase?
So Coinbase right now, I think Kathy's strategy, that's a 5 or a 10-year strategy to wait. And I think she'll do well with it over that period of time. But on the macro right now, what I'm looking at in Coinbase on the 12-hour, if we take a look, I circled it right here. I also circled it with the money flow. Every time you seem to come up here into the green, you just see more downside. You just roll over. And here's a potential bottom point around $23 here. It's a big fib level. And I think you could kind of repeat, you see this, let me just show you how I drew it out. Repeat this trajectory downward kind of from either up here or either kind of where we are right now. It would be approximately this area. That's that same kind of trajectory down for a bottom in the summer, June, July, August. That would be around $23. So obviously, coin is very, very volatile. Its all-time high was, let's just look at the all-time high was 360 about, and then down to 20. So if you're betting that this is going to come back to make new all-time highs by, let's say, the next 3 to 5 years, you're fine over here. It's just a different kind of strategy.
Yeah,
somebody like Kathy,
depends on how long you want to hold it. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think her position was, if I go back over to her chart, let me find it real quick. Yeah, she had purchased this 6 straight months in a row. She now has over 700,000 shares in 2023 exposure, but increased it over 700,000 shares just this year. So that's pretty significant. And of course, granted, back to your point, is the price point based on all-time high is pretty. And if you believe in crypto, if you believe that we're going to have a big winner here, which I think it's pointing more and more to Coinbase as being really the big winner here, possibly even over Binance here, at least for the United States. With that being the case, and if we do see a potential onboarding kind of, landslide, if we see any kind of movement in the traditional finance markets, Coinbase could benefit from this. Again, they're still kind of a target for the SEC. So they're not necessarily off the board yet in terms of Wells notices and things like that could play into this for sure. Silvergate, another problem there.
It's just, I think the problems outweigh the the pros right now, but 6 months from now, I think Coinbase, I'm really going to be looking at it. 6 to 12 months from now, really going to be keeping an eye on that.
Interesting. All right, so GBTC, this is Wolf of Wall Street saying pumping hard on the day. Grayscale starts their suit against the SEC. The judge has been aggressively questioning the SEC. So this is a good start, and I would agree. The fact is that we've already started to see some movement on GBTC. It has recovered somewhat. What are your thoughts on whether or not this is a good, if you wanted to go hedge against Bitcoin right now, would you go that direction?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not the biggest proponent of GBTC because that kind of defeats the purpose of Bitcoin. I like self-custody and those type of things. But, I think it's going to
These are normies, though. These are people that are out there just trying to get exposure, what they think is exposure.
I mean, I don't think you're going to lose all your money. Do I think you're going to get the same kind of return that you would get buying Bitcoin? Maybe not. I mean, we've looked at kind of the scammy things over with it. So I'm hesitant, but I don't think you're going to lose all your money with that. You know what I mean?
Here was Willie Woo saying that the spot ETF approval would dump the price of Bitcoin and pump the ETF. The pent-up sell pressure on GBTC, which accumulated during the bear market, which is true, and then also reflected this big discount, would be released onto the open market. That's an interesting scenario, and I think Willie might have an angle here that would be interesting to spot. The question will be timing. This will be timing, because if we're dealing with entering out of a bear market, even if we're still in the bear market, but we're seeing volume, volume could gobble that up pretty easily. This would hurt if it was in a deep bear market where volume was low and this happened.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that something like that, what Willie was saying, I feel like that would take place over the course of a week and then it would kind of just be done. You know what I mean? I feel like it would just happen and get factored in very quickly.
Yeah, move in, move out.
Yeah, so if you're a really sophisticated kind of trader, maybe you can map that out, but I don't know.
Yeah. All right, so let's jump over to Solana. It dives 7% daily. Is 15 the next big target? We had a chance to call the bottom on Solana on the most recent $8 bottom back in December. We were able to go in with Tim Warren on that actually and did it. But key support levels around 17 and 15 and resistance around 20 and 23. Let me zoom up on that for you guys a little bit so you kind of see. Solana's one that I've been looking at, jumping in, jumping out. It's a good trading token to me. I think I look for it because it's so volatile right now. If you call it right, where do you see this one going on your charts?
Right now, I think we've seen the better part of this rally. You're seeing a little trigger wave here on the weekly, which, you're still in a general pretty giant downtrend here. And I think you're just going to kind of roll over from this giant liquidation cascade here. My kind of estimate for, potential bottom, like a lot of other things, it'd be faster if it's in May here, but I think you can at least do a double bottom or make a lower low. Problem is, other than the bottom we had here, there's not much to latch onto. There would be a potential, there's still $5, $3 are still in the cards. I mean, it's kind of like that same notion where you just talk about it for a while, it gets popular, and then everybody kind of dumps it. Looking at the pattern on the daily here, every time we come into the green, it just goes farther down. It just kind of goes farther down. So if we could let's just see an estimate, something potentially like this of what you could see for the next, maybe next few months here. Let's see where this would bring us to. Yeah, that's into April, $5 potentially if you repeat that pattern. So, yeah, I don't know. I'm not too optimistic. But I do think we came up so much. I think you're going to have to, at least in the short term, next few months, come down to $12 to $10 again. So,
if you look at the range on Solana back from December right there, that's a 219% move. Hopefully, some of you traders have been able to exit Solana's position. If you were going in on this back in the early parts of the year when we were booking in the portfolio and talking about these different tokens and opportunities. But that in itself, I still do look at Solana. The problem with sentiment, it is on a big downtrend right now. It's gone from a 55.71 in basically 3 weeks, the 23rd, and here we are at a 47.36. So it's descending fast. It's also starting to separate on the amplification sentiment, which again gets me back to the point of this will continue to fall. You're on a pretty big red candle right now on the daily too. Right now, it's panning out because 1854.
Yep.
So daily close yesterday was around $20. So we could see maybe 16 by the day.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it could keep us, but especially bleeding against Bitcoin too. A lot of these alts are going to get hammered hard against Bitcoin.
Right.
Really bleed against Bitcoin.
You talk about that a lot too, with the fact that
Yeah.
alt season is not. We're not in the alt season now. We had this nice little alt rally.
Yep.
A lot of people made some money on it, which is great.
Yeah.
This is the perfect lesson for many of you who are in crypto for the first time, knowing when to sell. Don't fall in love with these tokens. We say it all the time here in the crypto pit. Take your profits. You may not get it at the top of and you may be on the other side of the downtrend, but you might still be up. Those are the times in which you cannot just assume that token's going to recover. And with all the macro that's playing into the market right now, the 50 basis points, the situation with Silvergate, the liquidity issues, the pressures from the SEC, you have to play a little bit more close to the vest here. Let's talk about Polygon. That's another one that we jettisoned. Though we love this token, don't get me wrong, but we sold it all pretty much at what was this local top. We got lucky in the sense of understanding that there was some cycles occurring. And if you're a mastermind, we've talked about this many times about when to get rid of Polygon. And a lot of people were a little mad at me for dumping Polygon, but we were able to do it. What do you think as far as Polygon? Can we see the 50-cent range again?
I think you're right, Paul. I mean, from what I'm looking at on my chart right here, this is my trajectory down. This would bring you down to, I'm actually, I think, a little bit more bullish than you might be, down around 60 cents into May, but it could be worse than that. I mean, this looks probably as bad as possible, almost as bad as possible in the weekly. It's just a lagged on. This is just a lagged on. We haven't seen, this breakdown in a while. We would have wanted to hopefully see us come down farther, back in July of 2022, but we've lagged up here in a giant kind of ascending wedge. And let's just do a little bit of traditional TA. I want to show you on this for a breakout, and this would give us, I just want to show you guys the technical target here. I mean, it's going to be pretty low. You break out of this wedge, your technical target's all the way at 40 cents here. That could be a potential bottom for a potential double bottom. I think a lot of the coins will make lower lows. This one may not make a lower low than its June 2022 low or back here. There's a lot to latch onto, but ultimately, if you go down these time frames, nothing really looks good here. Money flow coming out, very indicative of a potential top. If you look here at the money flow crossover, that's the last thing let's do is just map out this trajectory right here where we would end up if you repeat that. This, I think, would be a good prediction. I know it's really low, 24 cents, but I think ultimately you could latch on to 30-something cents into June, July, something like that.
That would be a fantastic buy on Polygon.
Yeah, if you were to come down that much.
I mean, because if you're looking at doing a long-term hold rather than playing this rally, which is pretty much, I think, over now. We'll see a few volatility scenarios playing out, but if you look at the Polygon chart here, these are the two sentiment drop periods. This was back in November, and it played out through the end of November, and that was the kind of volatility we saw there. Now you've got this one that's playing out here in February and early March, and look at this drop right here compared to we're continuing to see this decline. Remember, Polygon was hitting almost 70 points on the sentiment scale and crossover. All of that was happening right here during this run right here. So that shows you that sentiment really does feed volume into the markets, which causes those big, massive moves. Anytime you see those kind of things, guys, you have to always be anticipating there's going to be a backside. These things don't climb to 100% sentiment, never do. But a 70 score and then dropping down to what will be possibly in the 40s. This is almost unheard of with Polygon. So, but it's another project. I think that even this one, will depend on how Shanghai and ETH play out as to whether or not we'll see any kind of aftermath playing into all of that.
A fun fact on Polygon, even if it came down to, let's say, 25 cents, it's only a 91% correction from the all-time high.
I love how you say it's only a 91%.
But compared to everything else that went down 95, or, you know what I mean? It's only a 91%.
It's only a 91%.
But compared to everything else, I mean, Cardano in the last bear market went down 98%, came all the way back to making all-time highs. So
$3. I remember that. That was when I exited. That was when I was a Cardano believer.
Wow.
There was a day when I was a Cardano believer, and I exited, and I realized sometimes you have to.
Well, you weren't that big of a believer if you exited.
Well, I did, yeah. All right, so hey guys, we're going to get into some questions. Make sure and drop them in over the side. Also, let's take a look at the poll today and see what the audience is saying. Will Bitcoin hold above 20K by April? That's 3 weeks away. Everybody's saying it's pretty tight. I think if we held on a little bit, we'd probably be able to 50-50 here on this. Look at it. This going up a little bit there on yes.
That's pretty much 50-50, yeah.
Interesting. Make sure and smash the like button, guys, by the way. If you like the altcoin show, we do this weekly. If this is one of the shows you want us to continue to do here on the network, we've got a handful of different topics. Make sure and smash the like button. We'd love to get your feedback. What do we have on questions today? Anything good?
Yeah, we got some. So let's see. MATIC led the pump. It is leading the dump now. I agree 100%. That's a good point. Special K.
Fast move down.
People still complaining about me being bearish after seeing the market, so somebody's agreeing with me.
You have a fan.
Yeah.
There is a fan out there.
Somebody's saying, get out of here, $500 ETH. What I will say about those comments is the more comments we see that no way ETH is going to 500, no way it's going to 600, the more likely it becomes that we go down that
You get into human psychology at that point. Yeah. And investing is part psychology, I always think, part sentiment, and then it's part fundamentals. And the fundamentals always usually relate to the charts, okay? Because historical, you look at the patterns, and that's the typical way of reading markets. But hey, listen, this is not rocket science. It's unfortunately using all the different tools that you can to try to get a best probability, which is really that's investing.
Yeah.
Best probability. Put your position and try to be in the best
risk management, game of probability.
Yeah. And the scenarios are playing out. I mean, whether you're in crypto, whether you're in real estate, you're looking for real estate as an option. The one thing I always tell a lot, because we're still teaching those classes on the weekends, now it's every other weekend, on these high net worth individuals that are entering crypto for the first time, the thing that they are very disciplined in, guess what that is?
What is it?
Diversity.
Diversity, right.
They are very balanced in their portfolios, which I tell our audience all the time, do not get overweighted in your commitments. I know everybody that watches our show, very heavy in this. Tech, I would say, is coming back. Be watching for some alternatives, and as well as, there's some other angles here that we should probably be doing in more of our shows. By the way, we've got a podcast that is a Substack only podcast over on the Diamond Circle, which you can join just by searching PBN3. You'll find us out there on Substack. Join there because we do a lot of additional content, more chart analysis, audio notes on additional content from the show. There's a ton of stuff over there that never makes it over here to YouTube, including our own Crypto Pits research. We drop that into a lot of the posts over there on Substack. So get part and become part of the Diamond Circle. If you guys want to reach me, it is out there on Twitter, @Paul Barron. We'll catch you next time right here on TechBat.